So, Chris, do you remember making Drive?
I remember Mikey writing the riff. He came in with the riff, and Brandon really liked it. And Brandon instantly was like, wide-eyed. Oh, I got lyrics to this. Started putting, lyrics and finding the melody. And I just remember we were all like, wow, this is gonna be a big song. But nobody knows this to be this kind of a band.
Yeah.
They're used to science, where it's more, a little thrashier, a little rappier, a little funkier. We were trying to find a drum beat for it. And so I was playing a lot of loops and José was playing a lot of drums. And the first beat that I played for the guys, I was like, hey man, this is a great groove. Like it's got this swing to it. Like we should use this.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, no. Like, and we went through 100 different iterations of the beat, whether it was a loop or José playing it or both or combination. And then one day I was like, hey guys, so what about this beat? And it was the very first beat that I had played. It was just enough time. It was just enough time that they had forgot about it. And they were like, oh, that's great. It sounds great.
That's funny, man. So going back to what you were saying about the song being different, you said you felt Drive was going to be big, but since it was different, was there some doubt amongst the band about whether it would succeed or not?
I don't think so. We knew that was a really good song. We knew it. The record label didn't want to put it out as a single right away.
Really?
We were kind of baffled. Yeah, they were all over Pardon Me. Like, and they have a marketing plan and everything like that, and Sony's a big conglomerate. So we were just kind of like, okay, if you're going to support us, then go ahead, put out whichever one you want. And so that's how it went. And the success of Pardon Me went to number 3 on the Billboard charts. And then Stellar went to number 2. And the record label was like, oh, let's put out a third single. And they chose Drive. And we knew Drive was jam. Like it was definitely different. It was more poppy than, we were lumped in that nu metal category. And that's not a nu metal song in any way.
Yeah.
And so I think the record label was, like, oh, well, should we do this? This is not what the band's really like. And finally, when they put it out, it really took over. So it was really cool. Like that goes to talk about the progress of those. Pardon Me went to number 3, Stella went to number 2, and then Drive made it to number 1, which is super, super cool. We got that little curve going.
That's really sick.
Yeah.
What exactly is Drive about? I'm assuming it's about a girl?
I hate to like speak for Brandon when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's definitely about a girl, but it's also just about, take control and move on, move forward, just go somewhere, you know what I mean? Like that's for me, that's how I take it, because I relate to it personally in a different level than he does. And I've never once asked him what a lyric was about. Not once. Cool. I don't want to know. I'm like, you who knows? Like if it touches me and I dig it and I can relate to it in my own way, like I'm super cool with that, So I've always, when somebody says, what's that song about? Like musically, I could dig into it and everything like that. But like when it comes to like the lyrical part of that, like I always let Brandon just speak for himself on that.
Yeah, that's fair enough, man. So one of the things about that song I like is actually the video. I think the video for that song, it's very chill and it's very innovative in a lot of ways. Do you know who came up with the idea for like the sketching part of that video?
I think that was Brandon and José, actually.
Okay.
We did it in Minneapolis.
Okay.
I remember that. We went to some crazy school out there, and it had an art center with all the cool wood panels and everything. Yeah. I remember it being like negative 19 degrees out with the wind factor. I remember how cold it was, and I'm pretty sure Brandon and José had that idea. It might have been Brandon initially, but they were like, oh, we can do this. We can do all this illustrations. They're both really great artists. We'll do this and we'll make it look cool. But they had to draw every single one of those sketches.
Really?
I mean, it was thousands of sketches, and they definitely. I remember they by the end of it, they were like, "What did we get ourselves into?" Like Like they literally had to do all of those. Each frame by frame, they changed and drew everything between the two of them. And
Man.
I just remember them being wow, like they definitely bit off more than they thought they were going to.
Yeah. So what did you
Man, I
think?
can't remember who directed that video right
You
now.
want me to look it up really quick?
If you want to, sure.
Yeah.
That's bugging me right now.
Yeah. Give me 1 sec. Phil Harder. Does that sound
Phil
accurate?
Harder, yeah, Phil Harder, yep, yep, yep.
That's cool.
Really, really cool guy, amazing director
Hmm.
as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's cool, man.
yeah. Yeah. All I remember is the artwork and how many drawings those two had to do, and they were just like we were like literally waiting on that to put the video out because they just took them so long. They were just working constantly to
That's
try to get
funny.
it done.
Did that
Yeah.
interfere with touring or anything when they had to do that?
No, no, no. Just made it stressful for Brandon and Jose for sure.
Jeez. Well, they got it done. What did you think of the video when it came out?
I thought that was great. I thought it was great. I thought it was really cool. I thought like in a way it kind of looked like the videos that I had been watching in the 90s, like the
Yeah.
Hype Williams videos and things like
Okay. Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
was, all those kind of hip hop videos with the way it was colored and everything. And for me, that was relatable. So, that's definitely one of our better videos that I would
Yeah.
I
It's
would
really cool. It's a
say
cool
from
one.
my perspective.
So why
Yeah.
did you guys choose Minneapolis? I mean, I'm sure that LA, which is like the film center of the world, has everything. Why Minneapolis?
That was Phil's thing. He
Hmm.
chose a location. He said, I got this really cool location.
Okay.
I really want to film here. I'd love to film here. Would you guys be cool coming out and doing it? And obviously we'd say yeah to anything back then. We're like, yeah, let's do it. Little did we know it'd be like it was so cold. I mean, if you weren't completely covered up and you were outside for 2 minutes, you were getting frostbite for sure.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Toronto, so
Yeah.
I can relate to that to an extent.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's
Think of
funny.
your coldest Toronto days, and that was
Right
what
now,
it was.
do you know how cold it
Yeah.
is right now outside? Oh my goodness.
No, no. Tell me,
In Celsius, it's like minus 20. My car stopped working for like a week because the battery just froze. Like literally. I was
man,
like, dude,
man.
that's funny, man.
I think one of the things that sets us apart from other bands is that we are different. Every record we've been writing, you know, even after that, had been completely different, like a totally different sound. Um, and especially, our life was on the road, so we kind of consciously were like, we want to go a little,
Hmm.
we want to separate ourselves. It was a lot of like rap metal back then,
Mhm.
and Brandon's a singer, and we were
Mhm.
playing a lot of shows with a lot of bands that were big and bands that weren't big, and they were all kind of especially the bands that were younger, were all trying to be Rage Against the Machine, or
Hmm.
they were all trying to be Korn, and those bands already existed. So we were like, we're coming in our own. We know we can write songs, and we want to establish our own sound. And we didn't know exactly what that was,
Mhm.
but we knew that we wanted to be different. So for us, Drive was like a breath of fresh air.
That's awesome. So do you remember working on Wish You Were Here?
Brandon writes a lot of poetry, and I was always keeping a journal and always writing lyrics. And he came in one day, I think after actually being out on the beach that night, and he said the line about looking at the ocean
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it looks like 1,000 stars, like that.
Mhm.
I was like, whoa. I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about, because that's so visual. Just that combined with Mike's riff and the way that song came together, it was just like a lot of songs in that record, as they were coming together, we were just like, wow. Like, even to ourselves, we're like, wow, this is kind of special. We're starting to see the fruits of our labor a little bit, and these songs are really good. They're really different
Mhm.
than what we wrote before. So, we were like, in the back of our head, we're like, are people actually even gonna like this? We were coming off of the Ozfest and touring with Korn and System of a Down and all these bands, and we just wanted to distinguish ourselves from them, you know, not that we didn't like any of that or anything. We just, you know, we just wanted to be a little bit different. And as individuals, even when you saw us on stage, we looked different. You know, we weren't your typical nu metal band.
For sure. So, do you remember working on the video for Wish You Were Here?
That video, Wish You Were Here, the one you saw on MTV was different than our original video.
Okay.
Our original video was supposed to come out either on 9/11 or the day after 9/11. I can't quite remember. Very, very close to 9/11. And in the video, we're jumping off a bridge in the video. And it's obviously fake. They're dummies. And, you know, there's one where they throw me off the bridge and I have a fake dummy and I had my dreads and my dread wig flies off and the body's just floating through the air and you can see it. It's really funny, actually. But it was a really cool video. It was one of our better videos, I think. I think now you can look up the original video. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere. But MTV wouldn't play it. They were like, nope. Like, we just had 9/11. We're not going to play this video. We're not going to play your song. So last minute, we just kind of threw a bunch of live clips together and, like, you know, home footage of us at the Morning View house and things like that. So we didn't, like, you know, completely scrapped the whole video. We totally changed it so that MTV would play it. And I remember just being, man, like not getting the vibe. They're really, you know, it's like, we're not playing it because you guys are literally jumping off a bridge and we can't have that image right now after 9/11. And it just goes to show that if it doesn't matter, it just matters how big of an artist you are. Because if you remember, right after they told us that, right after they made us change the video, then they had the Eminem video. They played that night and day, all the time. And he literally is jumping out of a skyscraper, rapping on his way down to the ground.
The Way I Am, right?
Yeah, I think that's the song. Yeah. And I just remember, like, well, we're not as big as Eminem. So you know, they could tell us what to do, but they're going to play that. So I was a little upset about that. Look, like, if you're going to say one thing, then just be that way, you know?
I hear you.
But
yeah. Well, I know.
But it just put us in our place. It was like, yeah, you're not Eminem and you don't have that pool. So change the video.
Is what it is. But I know the same thing happened in Blink-182, actually. For Stay Together for the Kids, they actually, if I'm not mistaken, they actually filmed the video the day before 9/11, or like the day before, 2 days before, and the day before. And then when they were going to release it, it's the video where, you know, the wrecking ball is going through the house and everything.
Yeah.
But that's the original version. But then after 9/11 happened, they actually canceled that version and they had them reshoot the video, and it was like a version of them just playing in a house that was already broken, but like you don't actually see it get torn apart.
In the long run, you know, it's about the music. Yeah. You know, the video is just an added benefit. I just remember our manager being like, well, they can't play it. And then all of us being like, well, we'll change it. Like, we didn't really think twice about it. We're like, it's more important for people to hear our music than be like, well, we're not going to make a new video or something. It was, you know, it's just a matter of editing it a little different and putting in, you know, other stuff. So it wasn't that hard in the long run.
Yeah, I hear you. So do you remember working on Pardon Me? What was the writing process like for that song?
I was big into a lot of those fades. So the beginning of Pardon Me, you know, has a sound that fades out.
Yeah.
I was big into doing a lot of that and doing a lot of that with the record and the volume, like kind of manipulating the record both. So there's parts of that record where I'm actually like tapping the record and then it's a weird motion. It's hard to shake, but it is like it's almost like you're drumming. You know, you tap the record twice and then pull the fader down a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And it was just something that I related to José. Musically, it doesn't sound like it's related to José, but it does fit like that. And that's where my headspace was at when I was thinking about that kind of stuff. I do remember actually doing the recording of it, but once we got to the recording process, I remember the room and I remember being at NRG. And once we got to the recording process, like for me, I was like, I was done by then. I already knew all I had to do was go in and lay it down. And literally 10 minutes and I was cool. Like that song's done, you know, but it took a lot of work to get to there. And that part I remember being in Sound Arena and and just kind of vibing. And I was really like trying to lock with José back then. Like obviously I still am, but I was always like trying to play around José's beat, and I was always like, okay, this is cool, this is cool.
That's awesome. So what did you think of the music video for Pardon Me?
We had a better vision for that video, not a better vision. Like, for example, we wanted to do everything post and put flames and things in and do it all digitally. And, you know, we were kids, we didn't know how much that cost. And once we found the price tag out, we were like, oh, we can't do that. But we were already like committed to making the video. So, you know, we did things like stitch flames onto our shoulders and, you know, of our outfits, things like that. So we had a bigger vision for that video. So I always remember that. I was like, man, I wish we could have like done all that digital stuff. So that kind of jades me from like actually looking how good that video actually is. But again, I mean, you know, that was our first real like major video shoot.
That's so cool.
And mine for sure. And, you know, I was just green and I just loved being there and I like doing it. The thing that always gets me with videos still to this day is the turntable part of it, especially when they show my hands moving. When you see a bass player or guitar player or singer, it's all synced up. With turntables, what you're seeing isn't what you're hearing. I know it's a weird thing. It doesn't really make sense. Like if you're clicking the crossfader twice and moving the record a certain way, instead of hearing 2 sounds, you might hear 3 or potentially 4 different sounds. And so every video we have has definitely not been directed by a DJ. Every video, guarantee you, every single video is off sync.
That's
off sync. And so like when I go back and look at all of those videos, I'm just like, oh man, my part's off sync. It's not right. And you know, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm always like, man, I should have edited that.
That's funny, man. Were you like, I mean, on Pardon Me in particular, because it was your first video, were you aware that that kind of thing might happen, or did that catch you by surprise when you saw it afterwards?
Caught me by surprise for sure. I wasn't used to making videos. I just assumed everybody knew what, like, you're filming, it's live, it's locked to the music. But that's not how when you go into the editing room, they don't, it's like, okay, what looks good?
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah. And, you know, in order to sync up turntable scratching, you have to know what turntable scratching is, you know? And when you see a pluck on the guitar, you know that's where the sound is. Or you see the singer singing, you can, you know, sync up the lips. Like, you have to literally know what a DJ is doing in order to sync it up if it's not live, you know? And obviously we don't play any of those live, you know, just to get power to my turntable so that I could actually look like I'm actually scratching was difficult on that video. Like, I'm like, I need power. Like, no, you don't, just act like you're playing. I'm like, well, if the turntable's not spinning, then how can I scratch? Yeah. Like it's all about, you know, it's literally musical acting. When you shoot a video. If it's not a live video, that's exactly what it is. And it took me a while to like just get over it. You know, I'm still kind of like not totally over it. I'm just like, come on, just film me.
That's funny, man.
Are there any funny stories from the band you'd be able to share?
There's one night we had a Universal Blackout.
Okay.
I can't remember where we were. I just remember we had a sound engineer with us. So our front house guy also did monitors. So we played this bar, and I'm kid you not, the bar probably held 75 people, and there were like 7 people there. And right down the street, I think it was Celine Dion was playing, and our monitor engineer, our front house engineer, same person back then, was like, that's my favorite artist. Do you guys mind if I go check out some of her set? Yeah. So he did. And I just remembered we were supposed to go on and he wasn't back yet. And the stage was so small that they couldn't even fit my gear on the stage. So I was like off the stage, like right by the end of the bar. And so just a local guy was doing our sound. We started playing. I just remember the bartenders just started handing us shots, and we were all doing shots. And Brandon's always been pretty healthy, so he's not the kind of guy that'll just start taking shots and get super wasted or anything like that. So he was the only sober one at the end of the night. And, we're packing our gear up, we're selling the merch, we're doing everything ourselves. We finally get the truck packed up and we're like, who's driving? And we're like, nobody can drive, but we had to get to the next gig. So we were like, sorry, Brandon, you got to drive. And he was so pissed. And Brandon is, he falls asleep at the wheel a lot. Like
Really?
it's a hard time to stay awake. So it was a pretty sketchy night. We all remember it. We all call it the Universal Blackout.
That's hilarious.
Because we were all, taking shots to show, because it was just a crazy show, a crazy town with like nobody there. And that was a crazy band story.
It's hilarious. But, so what happened to your house guy, your sound guy?
Oh, he came back like halfway through the set. Same way. He had been drinking wine with all his buddies over there and everything like that. So nobody could drive. And Brandon would drive the van, but not a lot. Just, he'd take like 2-hour stints, while some of us would be like full on 8 hours straight or whatever we had to do, But, the lead singer, he's got to be able to sing the next day. I could be hungover and sick with the flu and thrown up in a bucket and still be able to do my stuff. You can't do that when you're trying to sing. So, it's like we all knew what our roles were. We still do. And, we just make whatever situation work. And it really is a testament to the longevity of our band.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. So when are you guys going to write a song called The Universal Blackout?
Yeah, right. Brandon wouldn't be able to sing that one. He'd be too tired.
I mean, you could make that either an angry song or like a chill song. It could work either way with the story.
Yeah, we all laugh about it now, and I know he was upset, and we've had all kinds of moments where we're all upset with each other, or we're all like super elated with each other. Like the cool thing about our band is we communicate with each other, so if I am upset with you, I'm not going to be like, hey, fuck off and not talk to you for a week. What I mean? It's like, look, man, like you did this, I'm upset. Like, I just want to let you know how I feel. Let's move forward.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
We've always been pretty responsible that way. And you have to be.
For sure,
we're like the things we always say. We joke about it, but it's like we're all married to each other. It's like you have a relationship with not just one person, everybody there, and everyone's moving in one direction. So we try to all at least get to some point where we're all on the same page.
Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense.
Well, a big thing about being on the road is that I know now that the other guys knew that I didn't know is you got to get along with people. Like you live literally in a van or trailer or, a tour bus, 40-foot, 45-foot tube, we call it.
Yeah.
And you're just on top of each other every single day. You're traveling, days are long, it's a grind. And the last thing you want is just somebody that's bringing you down and you just don't get along with, and you got to deal with them every day, So I think that's a reason why a lot of bands break up is because of that. We were playing little bars that held 45 to 75 cap people, super, super small, on the West Coast. And then, we did around the US and Europe. And each time we came back, it just grew a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. So, I was mid-20s and early 20s, and I didn't care. I was out playing music with some cool dudes, and I wasn't even thinking about the future. I was just like, this is cool while it lasts.
Yeah.
And, and it was cool. And it was all like, obviously our demographic has changed greatly since then. It was all just young teenagers dressed in black, thrashing, trying to jump up on stage and stage dive and mosh pits. And then we came out with our first single off Make Yourself. And it was like that first row that was all just thrasher dudes became all like girls. And all the thrasher dudes are still there, but they were just one row back. And then each time it started getting, it's more mixed and diverse crowd. And now it's crazy because we'll play, out of crowds, we'll see babies and teenagers and, 30-year-olds, 50, 60-year-olds. It's just like, what? It's changed so much.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So, I mean, for yourself, like just as a musician, when you see that after years and years of work, things finally take off eventually. Like, what is that feeling like for you personally?
For me, the biggest thing is we got to move into a tour bus.
Huh, that's cool.
Like that was a huge step because we would drive in a 15 passenger van in a trailer and we just drive ridiculous amounts of distance trying to keep up with any tour that we were on or doing it ourselves, whichever way. And it was exhausting. And like I said, we were kids, we weren't thinking about that. But once we got that tour bus and we didn't have to drive, it was like, oh, okay, like this is the life. Like, all right, we can actually sleep a little bit now, and those kind of things where the touring life became easier. It became okay. We don't have to eat at a Denny's every day, because we don't have time to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
Because we need to get 10-hour drive to the next show. Like we didn't have to. Those things became easier. We ate better. We were healthier. Just I think things in order to maintain a life on the road that you have to progress to, because there's no way that any of us at our age could be in a van and trailer anymore. We'd all be doing something different if that was the case.
That's funny.
Usually back then we came right off tour, went right into the rehearsal studio, right into the recording studio, and then right back out on tour. There was like no break at all. So it was a pretty quick process. And, we're not one of those bands that wrote a lot of songs that we didn't put on the record. We pretty much, if we needed 13 songs, we wrote 13 songs. We were pretty good at picking out which songs we think would be good. And the other ones, we kind of just skipped over them and just, let them stay as loops or whatever for future use. But we usually never come back to any of those. They're just guitar riffs or, a cool drum beat or something like that.
That's cool, man.
So what was it like working on Dig?
That was one of the harder tracks for us to write, because we all had we were split on how it should sound. It was such a crazy experience in the studio. We were just like, well, it should sound like this. It should sound like that. We just changed the key of it. We were constantly like trying to work that song out right up until the very last note we put on the recording studio on it. It was just a struggle to actually get that song to the finish line. And not because it was hard to write, it was hard to lock everyone down on the same page for that song. I thought it should have sounded like, I think it sounds great. Don't get me wrong. It's a great song. But in my head, I was like, man, this is like our R&B banger right here. Like we should make this sound like a Babyface track.
Okay.
You know what I mean? We should really dig in and pardon the pun, but we should really R&B this song out. And, we never really explored that, never really got to that point. And Mikey had a strong vision on how it would go, and Brandon had a different one. And we were just, the whole time, we were like this, like, okay, we're going to get this song done. It's a good song every way, but it could be better this way. And we just kept doing that to the very end. And even now when we play it live, we change it all the time.
That's cool.
We changed the key, we changed we haven't changed the structure of it, but we changed the vibe, we changed the instruments on it. Like still, like we're like, oh, let's play it this way this time, or let's do it this time. And it's like a ever evolving song.
That's cool.
It's never got locked down.
So could you say that there's no like official version of the song, so to speak? Like it's still evolving?
Yeah, live there is no official version. Obviously on the record, that's the version. But yeah, that's really the only song that I remember where we were just right to the end, like, how's this song going to sound? What are we going to make this song sound like? Yeah.
That's cool. So what was it like with the video? Was it also a conflict, or how did that one go?
Oh man, no. The videos are fun. Videos are fun. They're totally like, all right, cool, let's do this. Once we get an idea for a video, we just kind of run with it and just enjoy it, So yeah, no struggle with the video.
That's cool.
So what was it like working on Stellar?
There's are some things on Stellar that Scott Litt actually helped helped me a lot understand what kind of sound should be on that song. Like I was doing a bunch of different things and playing around with things in the studio when we were actually going to record it. And we kind of built through different sounds, like the whole like backspinning and like the build up in the bridge section. And we kind of built that. And it took a little while to build that up. It wasn't just me, oh, let me do this on the turntables. It was like, okay, try this. Okay, now let's add this and let's add this. And it was kind of a new approach that I wasn't used to doing. And it was kind of like a reverse role where the producer is saying, hey, trust me, let's make this sound like this. Whereas I was doing that with the band the whole time in rehearsals, like, hey, wait, so I wasn't kind of used to that role, but I do remember that song in that way and it coming out in a super creative way that I had never even thought. So if you ask me what that song means, it would mean something, it would mean musically doing something new and adding something into my arsenal that I never had before.
Would it be fair to say that that song for you personally marked, I guess, an evolution in your musical journey?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I learned from it and I got better as a musician after it, for sure.
That's so cool. So I mean, just purely musically, what did you think of the song when it was finished? Were you surprised with how it came out?
I was surprised with how all the songs came out, how good they sounded. That record sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Like sonically. And that whole middle section in Stellar blew my mind. Like I didn't even know I was capable of creating sounds like that at the time and like fitting them in so well. Most of it was like, oh, scratch here, do this. And I think Stellar in particular was like, hey, wait, you can actually blend in and still do all the things that you're doing, but make it musical and blend in like you're another instrument in the band, not just the DJ soloing on top of the band. And that's what I say was something that I really took from that song and kind of like took that forward into songs we did in the future as well. So, a lot of the DJs back then were that. They were just like the feature piece. They would just scratch and they really didn't do anything else. They put on a show live or something like that, but actually fitting in with the song or writing the song, like they weren't doing that. None of the DJs that I knew were actually really doing that. So for me, that song really like put me on a different level.
That's awesome, man. Do you remember working on the music video for that track?
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit. I remember it was very difficult video to shoot because they hung us in these harnesses for the space scenes, like when we're floating in space, and the harnesses were not comfortable in any way. And when you shoot a video, it's a long day. Yeah. So those parts were long and you're just literally hanging upside down, like kind of like all awkward trying to shoot a video. And I think it turned out great. A lot of the post-production, again, that we were trying to do, kind of got clipped because doing digital effects back then were really, really expensive. Obviously, we live in a different world now. It's like just anybody could do it now. But I remember that video I'm like, man, I hope we don't have another part of me here. And like, we're going to have to like cheese out. But it ended up being really cool, and for the era, it looked great.
Yeah.
Obviously you look back now and you look at the graphics and you're like, oh, okay, but for the time it was great. And it turned out really, really cool. You know what I mean? It's really hard to do. I know how hard it is to do, to take a song and visually represent that in the way that you want it to be. It's like, it's nearly impossible, So when I see a good movie and I read the script or see the book and it matches my visual and I'm like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Like it blows my mind because that's one of the toughest things that I've seen in this industry.
Yeah,
we get video scripts sent to us all the time. We have ideals for video scripts and rarely has it ever even turned out the way that we thought it would.
That's interesting. So Stellar, like Drive and Pardon Me, is from the Make Yourself record, the first one you did with the band. In general, what was the experience of creating that album, Make Yourself, like for you?
We were just kids, just happy to be where we were and doing what we were doing. So we all had good work ethics. So we're constantly working, constantly in the rehearsal studio. And when we came home, thinking about, okay, what can we do tomorrow when we come back? And for me personally, the first half of it was me taking like kind of generic sounds and showing the guys, hey, I could do this in this section. And they were like, all right, cool. So I was like, well, I need to get my records first. It might take 2 to 3 weeks for me to get some records. They were like, all right, no problem. Like, Jose, just play a drum beat for 16 bars. We'll let Kill do whatever he wants to do there.
That's cool.
I was like, what? So like that whole record was like a lot of the DJ stuff on there. They were literally just like, yeah, cool. We trust you. Like, we'll leave you 16 bars there and you do what you want. And if it doesn't work out, we'll just, we'll shrink it down and we'll figure something else out. So they were real cool with like waiting for me to catch up. And, the whole Break and Privilege, the whole scratch section in Pardon Me, there's the Consequences. I mean, there's all kinds of things there that I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Just trust me.
That's so cool.
Do you remember working on Privilege? And in general, what's your creative role in the writing process?
Back then it was more like I'm just adding the turntable parts. The structural parts came because I was like, hey, I want to do this here. And they were super cool. And they'd be like, okay, well, we won't commit to this part. We'll just leave it here for you, and just literally, like, I just remember Privilege being a beat for like 3.5, 4 weeks. We'd be jamming it and playing it and getting really good at playing it. And it was just a beat. Like Jose would just play it. I'll be like, I'm going to get there. Just keep doing it, But really when we were doing Make Yourself, I was really playing catch up. I'm in the rehearsal studio every day and the guys are playing over different parts and changing them every day and just getting better at playing them. Because like I said, when we went into the studio at that time, we couldn't play the song any better. We were as best as we could. We got into the studio, we did the parts and that was it. There's no more chance to make it better after that. So we went in knowing that we had to be able to play these songs as best as we could. So that particular record, I felt like I was playing catch up on like the whole time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the guys are cool. They were super cool. That it's a testament to how cool those guys are because they literally just left the song empty. Like, as the clock's ticking down, they're just like, yeah, it's cool. We'll get it. Don't worry. We got it. You got yours. You'll get whatever you want. Cool. And, that was my experience with them, the first record. And I was so thankful for that, and I saw it again when Ben came into the band and we wrote Crow Left of the Murder. They did that with Ben. They really let Ben have his wings and let him just kind of like,
That's
okay,
cool.
This is what I'm used to. This is how I do it. And, it's a learning process, obviously. But I could see how we all interacted with Ben and we gave Ben the same kind of leadway and treatment as well.
That's cool. That's actually really, that's awesome. Because, you hear a lot of bands where like there's a lot of huge egos and certain people only want to be the ones writing and stuff like that, so that's actually really like, I respect that about the band, that like, it's kind of like a family like that,
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's a rock band, like Mikey and Brandon are going to be the key features in the band. And, we know that, but at the same time, they're both trying to get the best out of everybody. So nothing's off the table, and now writing music now in 2022, it's even more so. Everybody's kind of throwing stuff in the pile more. And it's really what kind of sticks now is kind of what's there. Yeah. We wrote that record in a place called Sound Arena out in the Valley, on like Northridge and Reseda. And it was just your typical blackout spot. There were bands on either side of you. There were no windows. It was dark. It was dirty, and you'd walk out for a break and we're in a valley, it'd be 100 degrees out. So it's like, oh, I'm going back inside. So it wasn't like, it was like all that energy was in that room alone. That was it. It was like kind of going to work a little bit to write that record. But for me, personally, it was my first record, that I got to write with these guys. So I was just, I was all green. I was like, this is great. This is fun. Like, let's just do this, and just saying any wild idea that I had, and I was just like, let's just go. Let's just do crazy stuff. So for me, it was really, really special. Obviously, it was the first record that I got to write with those guys.
How long was the recording process for that record?
I mean, I could tell you, I might be wrong, but I think we wrote for 4 weeks and then recorded for 4 weeks. So I think it was 2 months total for that record. And, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's how that went down. And then Morning View was next. We wrote that. We took the time and wrote that a little long. I think that was the whole process was 3 months. And then Crow Left for the Murder, we wrote that pretty quick as well. Maybe 2 to 3 months on that, like from starting on it to finished product.
So for that record, did you guys already have the songs written before going into the studio, or did you do a lot of the songwriting in studio?
We pretty much, when we went to the studio back then, we knew for the most part what we were doing, and all the songs were pretty much written. We were like, time was like of the essence for us back then. So we would, go in a rehearsal studio, come up with a bunch of different ideas, and then really bang them out and work on them. And then find a producer and go into the studio and record them. And it was just like banging them out.
So, I mean, given the success of Make Yourself, was there more pressure when it came to making the follow-up album Morning View?
Not on me personally. I think a little bit was coming from our record label. They wanted us to write the record the same way we wrote Make Yourself. And we were just kind of like, well, we're all pretty responsible, hardworking guys. Like, I think we could do it cheaper and better if we were in a house. So Mike was the guy that took the record label, on that one, because Mikey was already kind of in that world, and he was just like, look, we'll make you a cheaper record, a better record if you let us get a house. And he convinced them to let us get a house, and that by far was the coolest experience we've had in writing a record. At the same time, we were young, we weren't really thinking about the future. There's not much pressure on you when you're just like, hey, we're just having fun doing what we're doing. Yeah. And we all knew that we would get a record done. We all knew that it was the most important things in our lives at the time. So we weren't there just to fuck off. But at the same time, we got a lot of inspiration and had a lot of fun in that house. It was such a bonding experience. You go on work retreats and do all the crazy stuff to get your group to be better. I think for us, that even though we were already really tight and doing crazy things that nobody had, not a lot of people get to do, that experience brought us even closer.
So for the making of that record, you guys were all living together. When you're living together as a band, does it result in more creativity?
Yeah, I don't know if I think there's more inspiration. I don't know about more creativity. There's definitely, having an idea at 2 a.m. and hearing Mike in the big room, like coming through, playing a guitar. Like, it was really easy just to walk out there and be like, Mike, like, check this out. What if we did this? And the two of us would be up at 2 a.m, like just working, just a little part out or something. And then the next day when we all got together, we were like, yo, check this out. Like, there was no like, okay, we have the rehearsal room from 2 to 4 today, or 1 to 5, or whatever. There was none of that. It was like 24/7. If you had an idea, like, all the equipment was up and running, you just do whatever you want to do.
That's so sick. Yeah.
Yeah. So the inspiration was there, the beach was there. It was, Malibu's. It's all super nice. And I think that's what worried the record label. They were like, oh, these kids are just going to fuck off in Malibu. not give us a record.
That's funny. So how did Mike end up convincing the label to give you guys the green light?
Well, Mikey was always from a young age. He was interning at record labels and doing things like that. So he knew a lot of the people as they were getting promoted through the record label. And Mikey's like our business guy of the band. He remembers everybody. He's always business minded with people. And, I don't know the exact conversation that he had, but somehow he convinced Sony to let us do it.
That's so sick.
So, in addition to Wish You Were Here, another big song from Morning View is Warning. Do you remember working on that song?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And it's funny, I remember the video more so than that. We shot that video in Australia, in like this office building in Australia. But I told you, we were always working back then. We never stopped for anything. So we're like, well, we're in Australia. We got 2 days off. Let's shoot a video. That's the perfect time to shoot a video. Yeah. I love that song, Warning. For me personally, there's some just weird sounds on that song. And I just remember trying to find the right pitch and the right key for those and just being like, is this too weird to put on the record? Or is this, like my perspective when it comes to writing these songs is completely different than like a guitar player or a singer for sure. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So how did you guys end up eventually forming that song and like coming to a decision?
That song was pretty easy. If I remember right, that song we wrote pretty fast. Like it's just one of those ones that kind of flowed out. Like the record before that, The Warmth, was that song. The Warmth, we almost just put the demo of it on the record because we were like, wow, this is it. Like it just came out. Brandon wrote the lyrics like right there and then, and everything just kind of flowed. If I remember right, Warning was that as well. Just kind of like, okay, it's a natural process.
That's cool. So another song from Morning View is Are You In? Do you remember working on that one?
Yes, that was another one that just kind of flows. Like there's songs that we really dig in on and work on really hard. Like we'll spend 2 weeks trying to get the right guitar riff or the right change into the bridge and constantly to the point where we beat it to death. And that one was one that just was just flowed. It was I don't want to say it's easy to write because it's not easy to write, but it was one that was just smooth and everything just happened naturally, and it was a smooth process.
That's awesome. So if I may ask, the song Anna Molly, is there actually a person you guys know named Anna Molly?
I would say that is a metaphor for something.
That's cool.
I do not know any Anna Molly by name.
That's funny. How was that song? Yeah. Do you remember working on that one?
Yeah. Well, Anna Molly is that on Like Grenades or is that on Crow?
I forget which record, to be honest with you.
Oh, man. I think it's on here. Let me look it up.
Yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good.
Oh, that was Like Grenades. Yeah, that was Like Grenades. Okay, yeah, that record was fun to make. That was a fun record. That's the second one we wrote with Ben. Mm-hmm. And we did half of that record in Atlanta.
Okay.
And then the other half in LA. And we worked with Brendan O'Brien on that record.
Okay, cool.
Worked with us a bunch.
Yeah.
A great guy, great producer, really, really fun to be around, and definitely draws the most out of us for sure. But yeah, that song on that record was kind of like the most normal song I feel like on that record.
What makes you feel that way?
I think for me, I just kind of know. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a single.
Okay.
I was like, this is gonna be a single. This is kind of like cut and dry. It's got a really good guitar riff, great chorus. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a single, as opposed to like the actual song Like Grenades or Rebel Girls. There's some ones that go out there on that record.
So I mean, of all the records you've made with the band from beginning to end, is there any one that sticks out to you in particular for any particular reason? Kind of an open-ended question, I know, but.
Yeah, no, they all stick out, obviously, and it's like it's hard to choose one over the other. You know, obviously the very first record I wrote with the guys was like probably the most meaningful to me. Not that the other ones aren't, but you know, I hadn't worked with them in a recording fashion at that point yet.
Yeah.
I did most of the touring behind S.C.I.E.N.C.E, so you know, we were super friends. We knew each other. We got along. We jammed out a lot. So, but the actual recording process was like, that was my first time with the band, and I was like, okay, this is rad. This is super cool.
It's so sick.
So that sticks out for me. It's probably the most meaningful, just for that fact alone.
Very cool, man. Very cool.
I like Nice to Know You. That's one of my favorite tracks, and I love starting a set with that track as well. I just remember José doing the drum beat and me scratching around a little bit, and then that's how the whole intro came about. Mikey was doing these guitar swells, and then I was scratching this sound, and I came up with this pattern, and I was just like, yeah, and I just kept every day. That's how the intro would start, and then finally Brandon was like, well, let's lock that down. Let's do it together. And so we did the intro together, and I just remember like, yeah, like I wouldn't scratch like this normally, but you probably wouldn't do this normally either. So let's come up with something that meshes. And it was basically us kind of playing back and forth off of each other and syncing up. And it's just like that was a really cool moment when we were in the recording room doing that one.
So sick.
And and it's a great opening song. And even live, it's a great opening song.
Is that like one of those songs where, like, for example, like with Dig, you guys are kind of still toying with it when you're playing live, or is it kind of set?
You know, for Nice to Know You, we like to do like it's not like an interlude. It would be more like a extended intro for that song when we play live. Like it's a real easy song to jam out to. It's like I think it's an F sharp major, I think. So, you know, it's like on the keys, it's really easy. It's all just black keys, and you could just kind of jam out, and we always just vibe out. And because it's an opening song, like, you know, we kind of do like to just come out and kind of jam before we bust into it. So it's every tour that we do play that song, we usually have a little different intro. Once the song actually starts, it's the same. But
that's cool. And how was the video for that one? Was it a good time doing that video?
That video was not so fun. We did that video in Bakersfield, and we did like I think we were playing a show up there, and then 2 days before we played the show, we were just doing rehearsals in that arena, so we decided to shoot a video, and it's in an arena, and it's kind of like fake looking live. It's not actually live. And it just was, you know, it was just like, okay, we're just going through the motions in that video. Like we didn't record it live, but it's trying to look like it's live.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Yeah. And in my head, I'm like, well, let's just record it live. You know, let's just do it live. But there's so many logistics that come in when you shoot a video that you can't always do that.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think it still looks decent, but I get what you're saying.
I'm always coming from behind the scenes. Yeah. You know, I can't look at things biased like that. You know,
yeah.
I don't think it's a bad video when I'm bagging on it a little bit. But I just remember being in Bakersfield and being like, let's just rock. I was like all ready to go.
yeah, for sure, man.
You know, and you halfway through the song and it's like cut. You get a chorus. Oh, let's just do the chorus. And I'm like, man, all day long.
Yeah,
you know.
So most of the videos you guys shoot, it's not like that. Like you guys will actually go through the whole song front to end.
It depends. It depends. You know, they're all different. You know, like but when we shoot a live video, usually it's like, yeah, it's live. We're doing it. You know, we just did a live video of us back at the Morning View house for Morning View turned 20 years. Wow, 20 years old. Last year. And we went in and re-recorded like a live show from that house.
That's sick, yeah.
And you know, it's live. We didn't play the album front to back live. We did each song, you know, or maybe there was one time we did 2 songs back to back, but we recorded the songs all live. So, there's no cutting, there's no stopping. You're gone. If you have to do it again, you rewind, do it again, but it's all live.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was enjoyable.
That's
That
so
was
cool.
fun.
So when it comes to writing, is it usually one or two people that come up with the ideas in the band, or do you all contribute?
I would say mostly, it's a rock band, so it's mostly Mike. It's the guitar player. If he's crazy, crazy musician, first off, and he just writes stuff that you're just like, what is that? What is that? What are you like? Okay, what's the timing of that? Where's the one of that? Like, what are you thinking? And and if Brandon vibes on it and likes it, then you got two key pieces of a song, and then we all kind of just start banging it out and try to figure out, okay, let's change this, change the key, change the timing, and we kind of all in that process. But really, Mike has to come up with that guitar riff, and Brandon needs that melody. If we don't have those, then we just have an instrumental, and it's not a song really. So that's really the process. It's sometimes, now, Ben Kenney's in the band, so he'll bring in a bunch of different things because he's a sick musician too. He's wild. He's probably the best musician in the band. Don't tell him I said that.
I don't know.
But yeah. So it's pretty open format, but we also realize that we're in a rock band and it's guitars and vocals.
That's so cool. So I mean, for
Yeah.
you yourself personally, considering you're the DJ, you do turntables, considering you're already kind of in the production world, do you ever get involved with the actual producing of the music?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think we all are. I always said I'm like the icing on a multi-layer cake. And so I'm like when we're in the studio, especially later in our career writing music, that's where most of my stuff happens. It's me and the producer and whichever band member feels like coming along that day, But there's a lot of like, afterthought to the songs to get them over the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at the very end of the process. And I have a big part to do with that for sure. There's a lot of ideas that I have in my head. I'm like, oh, I think we could do this. I'm like, Brandon, if you sing this melody this way, I can put it on my turntables and do this to it,
Yeah, that's cool.
And well, when I explain it to him, he's kind of like, well, why don't I just sing it that way in the first place? He's not thinking from a DJ standpoint. So it's a little different. So to show him that, I actually, have to like produce something and be like, okay, let's put this together and like, let's think about this. And, this can go here. And then 3/4 through the song, we can reintroduce it and it could sound this way,
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of production, but we're kind of all like that. We're all pretty much involved in the production process. When we write music, we don't have a producer with it. It's just us for the most part. And like I said before, now we've done it so many times and so often that we kind of get a feel for what we like.
Mm-hmm.
And if we like it, that's the first test. It's got to pass that test, obviously. And then we'll get, depending on our goal, we'll get a batch of songs. And then we'll kind of talk about producers and who we'd like to produce the song or help us out with the song. Because we always, if you leave the five of us up to our own devices, we'll be on left field. We need somebody with an outside perspective to rein us in a little bit.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So from Make Yourself onwards, Make Yourself was the first record that you were involved with the band.
Yeah.
From that point onwards, has your approach in the studio changed at all, or has it always been more or less the same?
Oh, it's changed drastically, actually, and that's because of technology. When we wrote Make Yourself, I was pressing up test pressings for scratch records, and I would always record weird sounds or just have basically a whole library of sound effects and things like that. And I would have to press that up to vinyl. So, that was about a 2-week process to even get a test pressing, and then another 2-week process to actually get real vinyl out of that. So, during that process, the guys are writing music and they're jamming, and I'm just like trying to fill in things and like, okay, we can do this. But then technology caught up and everything went digital. You got all the DVS DJ systems and everything was in the computer. And And all of those sounds that I was thinking about in my head, oh, I can't wait to get this record back, were instant then. Like I just put it in the computer and it was right there on the vinyl. And so that was a huge change. And that happened like around Crow Left of the Murder. So, and then I kind of went all digital. And when that happened, it kind of opened up all the keys for me.
Yeah.
Because, you know, before I'm just making weird sound effects on the keys and recording them and then playing them on vinyl. And then because everything went instant, it kind of just was like, well, let me figure out how to do all this stuff live and just skip the computer and go right to the keyboard as well. And then just add it as another tool in the shed, you know?
That's cool, yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely changed. Technology is crazy, man. Like it's crazy. Like I still to this day, I'm like every day I'm like, oh, I can learn this. This is new. Oh, this is new. This is new. It's like you always have to keep up with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I get the argument because I have some friends who they're very pro analog, and I get the argument, but I just think that the benefits of digital just way outweighs the analog, in my opinion. I think digital is better, personally.
Yeah, I think so too. But then, you know, we have guys in the band that don't think that. They think the opposite, you know, like, which is great because we have such a diversity in the band and it's never just one way. It's always like, okay, what is the best way for this situation? Because we use Pro Tools to record everything. And in my home studio, like the only time I use Pro Tools is if I'm dealing with Incubus stuff, you know. I'm Ableton all the way just because I feel like it's now surpassed Pro Tools in a way that Pro Tools can't catch up, especially if you're writing electronic music. And, you know, forever we used to record the drums live into Pro Tools and then run that back to tape, analog tape, just so we had that analog sound that we always used to have before. You know, and there's certain situations where we would still do that. You know, obviously now it would be like a more boutique kind of thing, but you know, anything's on the table. There's great benefits of fully analog, you know, but at the same time, you can't do the things you can do with digital.
For sure. So I mean, the early records like Make Yourself a Morning View, were they mostly analog or were they digital?
Oh, Make Yourself was all analog. Yeah, I mean, the only things digital were, you know, some keyboard sound effects or, you know, something like that. Even the turntables weren't digital back then.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, cool. which is crazy because on stage, when you go to play that live, then, you know, Brandon's jumping around, going crazy. My needles are bouncing off the record. And every single day in a different venue, it was always about how could I get my needles not to skip. You know, now that's not even an issue. I don't even have that problem anymore.
That's cool, man.
So how did you end up joining Incubus?
I was just doing my thing. I moved out to LA in end of 95. And in 96, I was kind of, as soon as I got here, I was like entering DJ battles and like getting to know all the local DJs and not in rock bands, hip hop DJs. And I was in a crew and that led to me joining a couple different local bands, and one of the local bands got signed to a demo deal to Columbia Records. And as the night they were supposed to sign, I was walking into rehearsal and the manager was walking out as I was walking in, and I'm usually the latest guy in the group, so I was like the last one walking in, and the manager just walked out and was real pissed. And he's a real cool dude. And I just was kind of like, what's going on? And I walk into the rehearsal room and we got the band sitting on one side and two singers sitting on one side with an A&R guy. And the A&R guy is like, hey, congratulations. You just signed a new demo deal with Columbia and I'm your new manager.
Sick.
And I was totally shocked. I was like, what is going on? And so I called that guy, the manager, that got fired that night. And was like, hey, man, I don't have anything to do with this. I don't know what's going on. I just want to let you know, like, I feel like this is a really raw deal. Because the music industry is cutthroat.
Oh, yeah.
Especially back then. So, like, I would say maybe 2 to 3 months later, he called me up and he said, hey, man, are you still DJing? Are you looking for a gig? I got a really cool band that you really might be interested in, and they're actually making moves. And I said, of course, yeah, I'm definitely down. And 5 minutes later, Incubus's lawyer called me, and then 5 minutes after that conversation, Mikey called me.
That's sick.
And he was like, "Hey man, can you come in tomorrow and try out? We're trying out DJs. We want to DJ. We just got rid of our DJ. We want a DJ to go up the West Coast with us on a little, trial run." So I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I went and tried out, and it was just me basically talking to the guys for an hour. It turns out they really just were looking for somebody that actually fit with them and got along with them, that they could actually be on the road with. And the last couple minutes, they were like, "Hey, well, can you actually DJ? Let's show us something." And I just showed them a battle routine or two, and they were just like, I don't know if they were weirded out or they just didn't know what was going on, but I was doing all these battle tricks and all this crazy stuff. And they just were like blank faces. And so they didn't say anything. They're like, "All right," they were totally cool about it. "All right, if we want to use you, we'll call you." And so the next day came, they're like, "Hey, can you come rehearse tomorrow? We want to use you." And it was Valentine's Day. And I was at the time I was dating a Dominican redhead Scorpio from Queens. And I was like, "Yo, there's no missing Valentine's Day with her. Like, I cannot rehearse today." And they were like, "Well, can you rehearse the day after? Because we leave for tour the next day. You got to learn 18 songs. You think you can do that?" I was like, I didn't know if I could do it, but I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And then we went on tour for like a week. And still, same thing. We got off tour. They dropped me off. They're like, "All right, cool." Didn't really say a word. We were just vibing and having fun. And like 3 days later, they were like, "All right, pack your bags, we're going to Europe."
That's sick.
And that was in '98. That was in February of '98. And now we're in 2022 here.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah. It's a cool story. It's fun. It's fun to tell. And it just reminds me of back then. And it just kind of teaches me a lesson, like, make sure you're good to people, because that'll come back to you.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually funny. I mean, your story kind of reminds me a little bit of Brian Johnson's story of joining AC/DC, actually. That's kind of what pops to my mind. Because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story, but basically what happened was, so when Bon Scott died, the band started looking for singers. And so one of the guys they sent an audition request to was Brian Johnson. So the audition was supposed to happen in like a multi-level building, like the band was on like the top floor or something like that. And like an hour goes by and the band's like, "Where is this guy?" And they go downstairs, they see he's playing pool with the guitar techs. And they're like, "Oh, okay, he's chill. We'll take him."
Yeah.
So like that's basically how we got it. You know what I mean? So I was like, it's funny, man.
Yeah. Well, a big thing about being on the road is that I know now that the other guys knew that I didn't know is you got to get along with people. Like you live literally in a van or trailer or, a tour bus, 40-foot, 45-foot tube, we call it.
Yeah.
And you're just on top of each other every single day. You're traveling, days are long, it's a grind. And the last thing you want is just somebody that's bringing you down and you just don't get along with, and you got to deal with them every day, So I think that's a reason why a lot of bands break up is because of that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So, I mean, what was that experience like for you personally? Like, you're in your 20s, you're in this band, you're going to Europe for the first time. Just for you as an individual, what was that experience like?
It was crazy. Like we were playing little bars that held 45 to 75 cap people, super, super small, and on the West Coast. And then, we did around the US and Europe, and each time we came back, it just grew a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. So, I was mid-20s and early 20s, and I didn't care. I was out playing music with some cool dudes, and I wasn't even thinking about the future. I was just like, this is cool while it lasts.
Yeah.
And it was cool. And it was all like, obviously our demographic has changed greatly since then. It was all just young teenagers dressed in black, thrashing, trying to jump up on stage and stage dive and mosh pits. And then we came out with our first single off Make Yourself. And it was like that first row that was all just thrasher dudes became all like girls. And all the thrasher dudes are still there, but they were just one row back. And then each time it started getting, it's more mixed and diverse crowd. And now it's crazy because we'll play, out of crowds, we'll see babies and teenagers and, 30-year-olds, 50, 60-year-olds. It's just like, what? It's changed so much.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
So how old were you when you first expressed an interest in being a musician?
Oh, man, ever since I I can remember. Music has been part of my life. Uh, I guess I was just kind of a little kid that was always turning the radio up loud in the house.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
cool.
finally my parents got me my own little turntable, and I was just always listening to music. My dad listened to music a lot
Hmm.
when I was a kid, but he was always working a lot, so it was really on the weekends.
Hmm.
And then on the weekdays, I'd always get in trouble for just like going over and cranking the radio up. But yeah, no, I just always loved music, and when I turned a teenager, that was kind of when hip hop was coming out and really, starting to hit mainstream, and it was the late '80s, and there were so many new sounds that I'd never heard before. Just coming from the DJ scratching and everything like that, and
Yeah.
that's really how I really kind of like dug into like turntablism and scratching. But as far as music, it's just always been there. I was in band. I was, always trying to learn an instrument. It's just part of me.
That's so cool, man.
So back in the mid to late 90s, there were a lot of bands from LA who had begun to incorporate turntable DJs into their lineups. Were you guys mutually influencing one another?
For me, there was no mutual, conglomeration with any of the DJs. I didn't meet any of them until after we were on the road touring. The first DJ I met was DJ Homicide from Sugar Ray.
Mm.
We went out on tour with them, and that was really rad. But I just think LA is a hot spot. You come to LA, you can see a band every single night, whether it's big or small. Just
Yeah.
starting out or end of their career. It's just kind of LA.
Yeah, no, for sure, man.
So you were talking earlier about how the video for Wish You Were Here needed to be changed due to 9/11. In general, how did 9/11 impact the band?
Three of us were in New York when that happened. We were I think we were at the Tribeca Grand down in Soho when that happened.
You were actually in New York. Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah. Me, Brandon, and Jose. And I remember Alex at the time was in New Jersey, and Mike was on the West Coast, and he'd flown back home to the West Coast. And I think Brandon and Jose and I were doing press the day before in New York City, so that's why we were there. And we were supposed to start a tour in New Hampshire, like I think it was like 3 or 4 days after that, and it was just a crazy, crazy experience. Just being in New York City and trying to get out of New York City and trying to get Mike from the West Coast to the East Coast. It's just like everything. If you remember 9/11, everything shut down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, God rest his soul,
Yeah,
but one of my friend's dads actually died in one of the buildings that day.
really.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
sad, man. Um,
There's so many stories from that day. And, obviously that day will never be forgotten. And for me, for sure, because I actually saw it. So
yeah,
I was just scared to be in New York for a while after that.
yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
what was, if I may ask, what was it like physically seeing all that happening?
I mean, it was traumatizing for sure. Like, I mean, to say the least. I have tons of friends in New York. I have friends in the building. Some of them got out, some of them didn't.
Oh
I
man,
had
I'm
a
sorry.
cousin that was a firefighter that was actually down on Wall Street at the time, and he was down there, like an EMT and everything, and trying to help. So, like, tons of stories and tons of real life knowledge of it, and it's like a dream. It's like I feel like it's like a dream. It's like yes, it obviously happened, but when I think about it and I try, visualize it, it's like it's just like, did that really happen? I still can't believe it.
It's nuts. I mean,
Yeah.
what did you guys do that day? Did you stay in the city? Did you get out of the city? Like, what was it like for you?
No, no, you couldn't get out of the city. We were in. They locked it, the whole area around the towers, like a 15 block area down, and our hotel was in that area, so we could be in there. And I just remember it just ash everywhere. People were just walking around like zombies. They didn't really know what had happened. Firefighters are sleeping in little bodegas, and nothing was open. So you couldn't get food, you couldn't get water. All those, little bodegas, 7-Elevens, things like that were all out of water because they were giving them to people that needed it. And everybody was helping everybody, which is great. But subways weren't working. There was no traffic. I mean, it was like The Day After Tomorrow. You remember that movie?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know if you remember that movie when
yeah,
the guy comes out to the street and there's just like nothing.
yeah.
It was New York City was completely There's nothing going on. And a couple of days later, we had to walk. We literally walked up to like 55th Ave, up Broadway, carrying our luggage, and we'd walk the middle of the street the whole way up. There was no traffic, nothing. It was surreal. Like you couldn't believe a big city like New York City could just get shut down like that.
That's crazy. So I mean,
Yeah.
so sorry if you just said it. I apologize if I misunderstood. But how did you guys eventually end up leaving? You had to walk out of the city.
Yeah, yeah. We had a van. They had that one of the bridges were open up to traffic. So from like Central Park up, you could get in and out of the city. And we had to get up there to meet a van that would meet our tour bus that was over in New Jersey, just, sitting there waiting for us. And we just kind of all got out of the hotel together. We went down to the first subway to try to catch the subway because they said the subways were running. They weren't. And we kind of like waited around for a few minutes and we're like looking at everyone else and who was kind of doing the same thing. None of the subways were working. So we were like, well, let's try a different line. We walked to another line, didn't work. And then finally we were like, well, we're just going to have to walk out of here. Like, just walk. Like, we don't have another option. So, we have like airport luggage literally walking up Broadway in the middle of the street because there's no traffic. There's no cars around, no cab, nothing. And so it was a long walk, but at the same time, it was an experience that I'll never forget. Like, none of us will forget that, and once we got to the van, we drove across the bridge out to the tour bus, hopped in the tour bus and drove to New Hampshire for our first show. And I think we were the first, I don't know if we're the first band. Everybody says we are, but I don't know if we were, I don't know if it's really real, but I think we were the first band to play in New York City because our second show we had 2 nights at, I don't know where it was. It was at Roseland or it might have been at Roseland. I can't remember if it was there or is it Hammersmith? Hammerstein? I can't remember which one, but we came back and we played the 2 shows there. And I remember that being a really tough decision for us if we wanted to play music. For me, I was like, music helps me through a lot of hard times, and we're going through a really hard time. And if it were me personally, I'd want to go see somebody that made me feel good. So, my vote was like, well, let's go back and play. And we ultimately ended up going back to play. And we teamed up with the Red Cross and Howard Stern, and we donated all that money that we made from those 2 shows to the Red Cross to help out with relief efforts. And we said, if you didn't want to come, you obviously you get your money back, and we would refund all your money. But the shows were packed. Shows were totally packed. I don't think very many people refunded their tickets or anything, and we made a lot of money for the relief fund, which felt really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was there? Yeah. I would assume there was heightened security for these 2 shows.
I would imagine so. I don't quite remember. I think everything changed after 9/11. So definitely heightened security everywhere. One of the craziest things that changed, I just remember being in an airport and we would fly through LAX every now and then, but not have enough time to come home. And all my friends in LA could just come in and have a drink with me and a layover and things like that. It wouldn't matter. You could walk people to the gate at the airport. It's traveling totally changed. Now you can't even,
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of our biggest, at the time, one of our biggest like causes to charity and a relief fund. And ever since then, we've been doing things like that through our charity foundation. We started a charity foundation called the Make Yourself Foundation. And it's basically, we do meet and greets or auction things off and collect money that we then go ahead and use them for people that give us grants for certain things that we like, for, cancer treatments, for any kind of natural disaster. I don't know the exact amount of money we've given out, over the years, but it's millions of dollars. And it's such a good feeling. And it's really great to be on a platform where we can do stuff like that.
That's awesome, man. I mean, that's good for you
Yeah,
guys because like a lot of bands don't really do that stuff. So that's at least one, I guess, positive thing, that silver lining that kind of came out of the whole
yeah,
disaster. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
were you guys like I don't know if nervous is the right word, but when you guys were back in New York or even your New Hampshire show, were you guys like nervous to get on stage after something that traumatic? Like, what was?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Mm,
I was. We when we came back into New York City, we stayed uptown. And I remember being on like the 50th floor of our hotel, and I remember like the elevator door opening, and I it took every single ounce of my courage to step into the elevator.
mm,
I was just like, I didn't feel good. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. Like that was my feeling,
mm,
and so it definitely affected me, in that way for sure. Um, when we played in New Hampshire the first time, it was outdoors in an amphitheater, and they definitely had more security, but I wasn't like fearful
mm.
in any way for my safety or any way. I felt like 9/11 definitely united America more. It wasn't like I was scared to be on stage because something was going to happen, there. And I remember one of the most special moments we ever had was at that show. We gave out candles to everybody that came in, and we were going to have a minute of
That's cool.
silence. And we did our minute of silence right before we played The Warmth,
Mm.
which is one of my favorite songs. And I just remember like literally like my eyes watering up, and it to me an extremely emotional moment. And then we bust into The Warmth, and it kind of like brought everything into perspective, and it brought everyone like together at that concert. And it was one of the more powerful moments at a concert that we've ever had.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So obviously, as musicians, you have to be in touch with your emotional side. That's where the creative energy comes from. So did this experience with 9/11, did it change you guys as musicians in any way going forward, or no?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Mm,
I think it made us grateful. I think it made us more grateful.
mm,
Actually coming back to New York to play those shows made us realize that hey, music is here to help and heal, and like I said before, it's gotten all of us through some really hard times. Everybody, like when you're down, you listen to music. At
yeah,
least
for sure.
I don't know if I can say that about my mom. My mom doesn't listen to too much music,
That's
but
funny.
like the countless stories over the years of people saying, hey, your music has helped me through this time or helped me with this, and I can relate because different music has done that for me as well. And I think in that moment and doing that tour, the US tour right after 9/11, like for me it definitely made me feel grateful to have the job that I have and be able to play music and help people indirectly.
That's so cool. So I guess on that note, what for you is the most gratifying part of being part of Incubus, of being a musician? What is the thing that means the most to you about your job?
There's a few things just off the top of my head, would be the friendships
Hmm.
between the guys in the band. Like it's we've all gone through just crazy experiences together. And when you go through tough times, good times, traveling, all that kind of stuff, seeing things you never thought you'd see, it brings you closer. So, friendship for sure is one of the biggest takeaways from being in this band, obviously. Traveling, I think everyone should travel. And obviously the music, being able to write songs that, you know, span time and space is pretty awesome. But if I just had to pick one thing that I'm super, super down for, would be the friendship for the other guys,
That's
with the
awesome,
other
man.
guys.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. COVID messed everything up.
Yeah, man.
We were, we had plans to do a whole world tour on the 20-year anniversary of Morning View. That got scrapped. It just literally, for musicians and entertainers, it just put a pause on everything.
Yeah.
Obviously it affected everybody in all aspects of life, but personally for us, it just put a pause. And, there's a lot of bands that can't make it out of it.
Yeah.
You know, they were not in a situation to be able to pause for a little bit or anything. And I think now, hopefully, I got my fingers crossed, in 2022, you know, like we're still dealing with COVID, but, you know, I don't think it'll shut down the entertainment business. I think it's getting better. Obviously, we can't go to Canada, we can't go to Europe and, you know, Australia or things like that, like as easily as before. But I think as the year goes by, that stuff will open up. And that's me being an optimistic person, but we'll see. But as of now, we have some shows in March. We got a couple of shows in Vegas. We have a festival in Florida and a couple of shows in between. And then the summertime, we're going to do a big, you know, U.S. tour. And then hopefully that can continue into the fall. And, you know, just going to try to get back to touring life a little bit. You know, we're always talking about writing music and it's hard to really lock us down to write a full album in this day and age. I think because full albums are kind of, you know, nobody's really listening to full albums anymore, the way that the music industry is.
Yeah.
So we've always been touring with the ideal of being like Elvis and just putting singles out for the rest of our career.
That's cool. That's cool.
You know, like going back to the 50s and just being like, oh, we got a single. And then once you get enough, put it all into a record. But I'm sure there'd be new music, whether it is a full-length record or just a couple songs or an EP or even one song. I'm sure we won't get through this year without writing music. So, you know, we're just trying to get back to normal.